Right. I'm a bit confused by this football thing because I thought the Belgium versus England match had been running for the last couple of years. And I think Boris Johnson joins me in that view. But anyway, I'm not sure who's going to win that game, but it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. Right. Wishbone Gold. Okay, there's my investment disclaimer. You all read it? Good, thank you. Right. Wishbone started out life as a conventional AIM explorer. And a couple of years ago, I decided that that was basically a losing game. Because assuming that you find something and you can prove up a JORC resource, prove up a 43101, you're then in the game of trying to raise a huge amount of money so somebody comes along and hopefully takes your resource away from you for a large amount of money, but more often a small amount of money. So what we did 2 years ago was to buy a gold trading company in Dubai. So that's the second item on the list. We do bullion trading. Thirdly, we then decided that we would reverse integrate so that we would supply equipment to artisanal miners. And I come onto that in some detail as we go through the presentation. Because the issue that we have here is that artisanal mining is quite a big sector. And these are people that are chasing veins, doing a bit of alluvial, so there's no exploration involved. They know where the gold is. We want them to mine more of it. We still have our exploration properties in Australia. We've got operations in Central America, but we are also expanding into Africa and Asia. So, results to December last year. We pretty much doubled our sales to 8.2, up from 4.2 in 2016. So again, we're a little bit different as an AIM mining company, where we actually have sales. It's not profitable at the moment. Gross margins doubled. And to put this into perspective, the trading margins are between 1% and 2% on trading gold. That's pretty much universal. And if we do the reverse integration, which is what we're doing at the moment, then the margins will go up to at least 8 to 10, possibly higher. So that's the overall plan, that as the revenues rise, the margins will also rise. Now, we've had pressure on our share price over the last 12 months. We did a deal with Riverfort that hasn't worked out. We're unwinding that at the moment. I've done good deals with Riverfort in the past. This was not one of them. It was effectively a death spiral under another name. But as I say, we're in the process of changing that. The last point is addressing a question that I've had on email from so many shareholders. Precious metals trading is exempt from VAT in the UAE. We are headquartered in Dubai. But that's tremendously important, and they took that decision because around about 40% of the physical metal traded in the world moves through Dubai. Right, artisanal mining. I've talked about reverse integration. What are we reverse integrating into? Well, 80% of the gold in the world is produced from large-scale mining. You can probably all guess that. It employs a couple of million people. 20% comes from small-scale mining. And this is a sector that nobody is really focusing on. And that employs 15 million people. So my first bit of name dropping for the evening is when I was talking to the president of Uganda recently, and he said, we've educated people, but our biggest problem is we haven't got anything for them to do. And in a presentation earlier, he had said, and we're stopping all of this artisanal mining. I said to him, well, Mr. President, Your Holiness, Your Magnificence, that's not really a very smart move, because what you should be doing is bringing the illegal miners into the fold, licensing them, and creating employment, and using that to create employment. So Uganda, unsurprisingly, is on our target list of countries, and we have a country head out there at the moment. If we now look at who's producing what and the employment, obviously, again, you would expect to see that the large-scale miners are a small percentage of the employment, but here's the really interesting bit, 620 tons. Now that's what we can measure from the World Gold Council. Probably that is closer to 1,000 tons. If we could actually put our arms around all of the illegal mining in Africa. So this is a huge amount of gold that's being produced, massive amount of gold. And it's not being measured, and it's not actually benefiting the countries in the way that it could. So, the artisanal miners lack finance and proper equipment. These are not criminals. These are people trying to feed their families. They're trying to do something to make money and actually manage to build something for themselves. So if you offer them a better way of doing that, they'll do it. It makes perfect sense. They have poor production levels due to the lack of proper equipment. And a really important point for me, because I've spent a lot of time in my life in conservation, is there's massive environmental damage. And that we need to try and stop. So, what we're looking at is working with licensed artisanal miners. We are not interested in buying illegal gold. We are leaving that entirely to the Chinese government. I don't want to compete with China. So we can take illegal miners, license them, and bring them into the fold. Tremendously important. If we give them better equipment and training, we will increase the production. Typically, they are getting very low yields in the work that they're doing. Proper equipment, proper processing, better yields. So from their point of view, this is a really easy sell. If you're making $200 a week now, with us you will make $500 a week. So that's an easy one for them to work out. From the government's point of view, we will monitor the mines and collect the taxes. At the moment, they're not collecting the taxes. They don't know what's being produced in a lot of cases. This one I find fascinating. There's no minister in any of these countries that I've spoken to that grasp the fact that if we do all this, their GDP will go up. The minute you explain it, they go, oh, right. But they hadn't thought about it. They hadn't thought that if we do that, the GDP goes up, we have a happy IMF, happy World Bank, more borrowing. So that's important from the government's point of view, let alone the collection of taxes. What we are asking in exchange is we want 10 to 15% on spot from the artisanal miners. And from their point of view, since you've gone through all of those things up there, they're making more money, we're making much more money, they're not being beaten up by horrible payday lenders, and so it's a bargain of mutual benefit between us, the government, and the artisanal miners. And lastly, but not least, proper discipline saves the environment. None of these people want to kill their families. But nobody has said if you burn off the mercury in your kitchen, next to the food your wife is preparing, your children will die. Nobody's actually said this. People don't actually go out there and explain it. As soon as you do explain it, they don't want to do it. Oh gosh, 11 minutes. Right, so we're going to have to speed up. We have an operation in Honduras. I'm just going to show you quickly. This is the original path up to the mine. So we clear it, road is put in place, That is a road in Honduras, it's fine. This is a lot of unprocessed ore. So it's just lying around because they can mine it, but they can't process it. Here we come to my 19 out of 10 score for innovation. This is a tractor. You may not recognize it as such because the wheels have been taken off and sold. There is still the seat. That is there so that the man can sit there and take it up through the gears to drive the plant. I loved it. I thought it's brilliant. Fantastic. They probably stole the tractor, but we'll gloss over that. What that is doing is it is powering, okay, there it is. Okay, this is their version of a crusher driven by the tractor. You see the stones? They are dragging the stones round to crush the ore. Now that will produce maybe 50%, if that, of the yield they could get. Now this isn't working. This is what we replaced it with. So that's around $300,000 worth of kit. Cheap. As you put the ore through the plant, that should pay back in 4 to 5 months. The numbers are so that if you want to know what the equipment is, when you download the presentation from the website, it tells you. So that tells you exactly what we've put in place. Now, 9 minutes, sorry about this. We are working at the moment in various countries in Africa. On our sequence of events, really, I guess, Tanzania, Nigeria, Uganda, and Zim are top targets for a number of reasons. In all of these cases, tremendously important to be in touch with the government, tremendously important to work with the government, with the authorities, and against the Chinese. This is the equipment that will go in for the refineries. Very straightforward to put in a refinery. It sounds tremendously complex, but it isn't. And it's relatively cheap to put in the first stage of the refinery. In all the structure of the group, we separate out each area. So Australia is separate because it has to be by law for the exploration in Australia. That's the trading operation. That's Honduras. That's our trading operation in Thailand. So that we structure it that way because we are dealing with difficult areas of the world, and it's important that if something goes wrong in one of them, it doesn't take the whole show down. Right. Directors and management. This is Barrett Koch, who runs the trading operation in Dubai. He unfortunately likes flying helicopters, but he did survive the flight. He's still around. Francis Doherty used to work for Transguard, logistics expert, and our CFO based in Dubai. This is Oliver Poole, who is head of operations in Uganda. Oliver is shown here wearing his red zone pass in the wreckage of Baghdad because he wrote the book Red Zone when he was embedded with the US Army when they entered Baghdad. I thoroughly recommend the book. Alan Gravitt, who runs everything in Gibraltar as company secretary. Michael Manelli, our resident jazz musician. No, Michael was Gresham Professor of Commerce for 2 terms as a city alderman and chairman of ZN Group, but he is dressed here as a jazz musician. Jonathan Harrison, who was with me at Sirius Minerals as finance director, head of the remuneration committee and also the audit committee. My old friend Simon Mann, who is head of operations in Africa and founded one of the premier private military contractors, Executive Outcomes, so knows Africa extremely well. And me. Casual photographs. I was at Oxford, I'm a lawyer, went to business school, and I haven't had a proper job ever since. So, we have to end any gold presentation with what's happening with the price. And so that's the story. And really, This is when we floated Wishbone, and it's pretty much gone nowhere ever since. I think that gold is due for a rise, and I tend to think this because of this. This is a billboard that was put up by the Chinese about 5 years ago all over Asia. This particular one happens to be on the way in from the airport in Thailand into the city center of Bangkok. And it's not really as if they're hiding anything. I mean, they're pretty clear about what they think is going to happen. And there's an interesting thing about what they've done since then. The renminbi is now freely exchangeable into gold in Shanghai. How many people in the room knew that? Okay. You may trade on this information. This is not inside information. It's quite interesting because the One Belt, One Road initiative, which you've all heard of, is to move people to trade gold in renminbi. The One Belt, One Road initiative also is offering to accredit refineries anywhere in the world for China trade. So at the moment, people say, I want to be LBMA accredited. Well, China's objective is that your OBOR accredited. So in terms of what we're looking at for accrediting any refineries that we put up, we want to be LBMA because it's nice and cuddly, but we also want to be accredited in China. And I would leave you with the thought that I'm grateful for your time, but remember this, China always has a plan. Always. I'm just under time. Thank you. Questions, please.
So any questions, anybody? Any hands going up? Lady just over there.
How are you planning on funding all of this?
Well, that's a good one, actually. Our market cap is down at the moment. As I've said, we are restructuring our relationship with Riverfort, but clearly we can't fund all of this on equity. It would be the same as trying to build a mine, and we don't want to do that. So we're in the process of looking at a debt issue. We're also in discussions with a mining services company in the Middle East. And for those of you who don't know this, most of the oil-producing countries are now looking at what else they've got, because unsurprisingly, they've all got lots of other stuff. So Nigeria, all oil, but it's the same belt that runs through Nigeria that's in Ghana, which has no oil, so they've mined gold. So Nigeria is getting more interested in solid minerals, as is the kingdom. So there are mining services companies in the Middle East that we're talking to that are capable of helping us run this and also capable of funding it as well.
Next question down the front.
Could you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Riverfort? You said you're trying to unwind the position you've got there.
Yeah.
I mean, how long is that likely to take to get ultimately sort of stability in your share price, which isn't related to Riverfort sales?
Okay. I have a lot of respect for those guys. I've done deals with them that have worked. This is one that hasn't worked. So we're unwinding it and parting friends. A week, 10 days.
Is there a large overhang of shares currently then, which they have to sell?
Yeah, there is. But that'll go.
And when they sell them, will they be selling them at a distress price or for a profit?
No, we will be essentially, me, other investors will be buying them.
Oh, okay.
You can go back and look at how much I've invested over the years in Wishbone and how it's owned. Management own a lot of it. I've invested about 1.4.
Can I ask another question
Yes.
too? You talked about, I think this was historical, that you had some gold exploration, and you traded gold bullion, and now you're doing sort of picks and shovels, the artisan side. Do you still do all three of those activities, or are you just exclusively picks and shovels now?
No, we absolutely trade bullion every day. And the basic structure of going into a country would be to trade first and reverse integrate afterwards. Okay? The exploration properties in Australia, we have spent around 130, 140% of our commitment so far. It is in my chairman's statement in the annual report. So forgive me if the number's not entirely correct, but it's approximately that. So we're well ahead of the spend necessary to retain those properties. Whether we will continue with those or not, I don't know. We'll see. There's no particular reason not to. There are some.
But you intend to continue with the gold bullion trading,
absolutely,
and expand the
reverse
picks and
integration.
shovels. Okay.
Yes,
got you.
I mean, the benefit of the reverse integration is, it's like when Butch Cassidy was asked why he robbed banks. Do you remember what he said? It's because it's where the money is. Yeah. And the point about helping artisanal miners is they found the gold. JORC and 43101 are there to stop fraud. But there's nothing wrong with chasing a vein or putting a dredge in to do alluvial where somebody's using a sieve. This is just increasing the efficiency, but the gold is there. So that means that your output and your cash flow is totally different from a normal exploration project.
All right, thank you.
One at the back.
Who will be responsible for maintaining the gold processing equipment?
If we put in a refinery?
Yes.
Our favourite refinery in Dubai is Al Etihad. We also have accounts with Emirates. The management team of Etihad left recently, and they have formed their own company. They've put up a new refinery in Dubai, and they will be our joint venture partners in putting in the refineries. There's no point in doing wheel reinvention here. If you have a team of experts that have set up refineries in the past, let's use them. But also bear in mind, today's refinery is basically computer-controlled equipment. So provided you have some management that understand how it should be installed, it is very much a push-button exercise, which it wasn't even 3 years ago.
Gentleman just down here.
It sounds like you've got some pretty good assets. Has anyone looked at doing an initial coin offering, issuing an asset-backed token rather than issuing debt?
Oh, gosh. This could take the rest of the evening, all right? One of the other companies that I'm involved with is Chainsey, which we're floating later this year. Vinay Gupta, one of the founders of Ethereum, is a great mate of mine. Vinay, if he was here, would tell you that the coins are a bubble, blockchain is not.
I disagree.
Well, listen, mate, if you want to try and do an ICO for us, backed by gold, be my guest. Okay? Be my guest. I wouldn't personally go down that route. However, what we have pitched to the governments that we're talking to is that we will use a Chainsey-based blockchain for the traceability of the gold. So that when the artisanal miner brings his gold to us, we will take a thumbprint. It's easy. That goes into the blockchain. And that will then, what we've promised them is that will then be traced to the exit point. The guys at Chainsey say, well, you can promise it'll be traced all over the world. My attitude to that is, no, I will charge them more for that later. So we are looking at traceability, and we recognize that as very much an issue in the mining market, and this is our technology.
Gentleman at the very back.
Mining to marketing, how long it takes you to bring the goods into the market? From mining to marketing, how long it takes?
Which point are we talking about in the process?
The processing you are doing in Africa?
All right. If we say the moment we get the ore,
Yes.
that will be processed that day. Depending on whether that's going to be exported as gold or doré or whatever, that would probably take another 2 to 3 days. Assuming that comes to Dubai as doré, that will be sold before it leaves the country of origin. Once we know that roughly what's leaving, we then run a rolling account so that if it's over or under, we simply credit or debit on the next shipment. So basically, the answer to your question is approximately 7 to 10 days. Now, in Thailand, that's different, where we are buying doré on the market and we're selling that immediately in Dubai. So basically, that's then the transit time, which is about a day and a half.
Richard, in your example, Juan in Honduras with his vintage Matty Ferguson and a piece of string,
Yeah.
how does he afford a $300,000 piece of kit?
Oh, we are putting up the money.
And so how does that finance? How do you take your cut?
In that case, we bought the equipment, and we take then 80% of everything until that's paid back. And that, as I think I said, if I didn't, let me correct myself, is 4 to 5 months, 4 to 6 months.
And then it reverts to what percentage after that?
Everyone is different. I thought when we started out down this road that we had a formula we would apply to everything. But actually, every country is different. In Honduras, it's actually a 60-40 split. 60 to us, 40 to them.
But when he's getting 100% of 50%, he's getting 50% out of the gold, he's mining, and he keeps 100% of that, but he's going to get 40% of
2.5 times.
Right.
So he's kind of
that's the
cool.
model.
He's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's the sort of model you try and, or form you try and
something along those lines.
Yeah.
But each one is different because it's a case of what does the government want, what are the objectives of that region. In most of these situations, you're dealing at different levels. You've got, in Africa, we always start with the top, with the government, main government level. Then you've got regional governments, you've got security, etc., running down.
Okay, thank you. And time for one more question. Anybody got a question? One just down here, actually.
Please tell me what use gold is apart from the pleasure of owning it. To my mind, it just ends up laying around in vaults in ingot form until somebody, somebody unloads it to somebody else. But it's got very little
Again, we could
usefulness.
spend the rest of the evening on this. But let me ask you a question. How much money in the world is represented by things like this?
Yeah, but gold isn't
No.
currency.
We're coming back to gold. We're circling back. How much?
0.
Okay. Do you know, that's a really good answer. It's wrong, but it's a really good answer. The answer is that note and coin is approximately 30%. And I say approximately because do you know what the horrible truth is? They don't know. The rest of it, the other 70%, is all electronic. It's a promise by he's got a Bitcoin. But that's not a real Bitcoin. Don't do this. Don't do this. Okay. But the rest of it is a promise by a government that they may or may not give you something. And that's not worth a lot. The point about gold is that it has been a store of value for thousands of years. Now, you can argue about you can argue about the relative store of value and so on. But, you know, the Romans mined gold all around their empire to pay their troops. Gold circulated as coin, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century. It's still out there as coinage. And right now, today, if you offer people gold in most third world economies, they'll take it. They will take that absolutely every day of the week over and above the note and coin. Now, the other promise to pay example that I adore is the $1,000 bill. This ceased to be legal tender 10 years ago? No, longer, 15 years ago. I'm looking at my Bitcoin friend here. Okay, I think it was about 15 years ago. And the United States called them in and they said, it's no longer legal tender. Well, they got back about 4% of the notes they'd issued. Because actually, if you're a drug dealer and I offer you a $1,000 bill and you think it's worth $1,000 and take it, hey, everyone's cool with that. I'm cool with it, you're cool with it. And then you buy drugs from him and he takes the $1,000 bill, and so it goes on. They're still out there in circulation. So value in notes and coin is very much perception. Now, so long as people view gold as a store of value, which I think is correct, because it always has been, it will always have a value. Whereas that piece of paper that I waved at you just now may not. And particularly with the way Theresa May is working at the moment, I would be very, very careful on this.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thanks.